we all have one life, right? We're all living this life that we're on, and the reality that unfortunately we can die at any moment unexpectedly. That's what drives me forward. Like, sounds cliche, but let's make the best out of what we can today.
Welcome back to another episode of the Rough Cut Club. I am your host, Joey Nicotra, here in our very new studio with my good friend, Mr. Shane Reitzammer. Shane, how are you liking the new space, dude?
Man, I'm loving it. We're still working out some of the kinks, but these chairs are comfy. You know, the Leo, the lion leopard down here, made an appearance. Probably one of my favorite parts.
That's right.
Of the new
Leo's
studio.
the new like TRCC mascot right here. We officially have a mascot. I saw this little side table and I was like, dude, I have to get this little random accent table. And so this has been like a long time coming though, just having our own space. We've been doing, for those that don't know, we've been doing a podcast for a little bit over a year, and we've kind of been in a shared podcast environment. And so now that we've gotten our new studio, we've been working on building this out. And so this is a big moment for us to just finally have this podcast studio after really like a year of looking for our own space and doing podcasts. And so this is a big moment, man. So congrats to you, bro.
Yeah, back at you. And I'm excited that our guest today,
that's right,
Eriksen's got so much experience in one of my favorite topics, which is documentary filmmaking. So I can't wait to dive into this guest, the special guest for episode 1 in our new studio.
I love it, man. Well, yeah. So our guest today is Eriksen Dickens, man. Eriksen, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for having me and trying to handle this pressure of being the first person here on the new studio. So I'll rise to the occasion.
I love
Thanks, guys. Thanks for that.
I love it. Well, we, Eriksen and I, we all kind of got, connected via social media and just through a few different resources and came across Eriksen's work. And I was like, man, this dude is actually killing it in all areas of media right now. He is not only a production company owner, but also a podcaster himself, documentary filmmaking specialist, author, and also comedian. And so a man of many talents is sitting with us today.
And a magician, though.
And a magician.
I saw something. Hey, man, we've got great R&D. Bella, our podcast producer tech, she dives deep, bro. We saw everything. It was cool. Yeah, it was actually it was in your YouTube video about you. I saw that little piece. You had something where you turned on fire in the kitchen. That's the part that I saw.
Okay, that was like my little branding video I did. It all sounds better on paper. You guys are guessing.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. You actually came across that. All right, that's awesome.
For sure, man.
Yeah.
Well, before you were an established magician and comedian, no, just kidding, but really documentary filmmaker and just production company owner, podcaster, author, all of these things, man. Take me back to like the beginning of your journey and just give us an intro to who you are and how you kind of got looped into this industry.
Sure, man. So I'll take it back, I guess, like the early days of how I got into filmmaking. I was always like a creative person. I didn't come from like a creative family, but for some reason I was born with that bug. I love movies. I love storytelling. I love writing. Grew up in Oakdale, California, which is, they go by the cowboy capital of the world. Kind of funny to think about that because it's in California. But it's a lot of rodeo tradition out here. And so I grew up on a ranch, and my brother and I, my younger brother, to pass the time as kids, we would make movies. We'd steal my mom's camcorder, get costumes, the whole 9 yards. We'd go out and we'd film. Unfortunately, sports took priority for us. We both were athletes. I was a baseball guy. My brother was a swimmer. And so athletics took priority. We both wanted to get scholarships in college. So we kind of put our love of movie making on the back burner. Long story short, we ended up going to the same college, and our sports careers took an end because of injuries. And we were like, what do we do with our lives now? Sports were such a big part of our identity. We didn't really know what to do at this point. And again, long story short, we eventually decided to get back into our love of filmmaking. So we picked up a camera, started to work that muscle again. And one thing led to another. We started just shooting anything and everything. I'm sure you guys know how that is when you're kind of getting started and figuring out everything. Didn't go to film school, so everything was essentially self-taught. And that's basically how it started. That's how the ball got rolling.
That's awesome, man. I think you are one of many people that we've had on the show, and very similar to actually Joey Nkotra's career trajectory of, being in competitive sports. I played sports, I not on the pro level or college even, but getting that injury, right, and then getting into filmmaking. And I want to ask, is there anything from being a athlete that maybe transferred over to filmmaking, the approach, practice, being able to swing, 100 times to hit the one home run, right? So like, is there anything that was applicable that you took from athletics to now filmmaking?
Absolutely. My brother and I, we actually talk about that a lot. And we feel like our upbringing as athletes essentially set us up to be successful in what we do now. There's a lot of different reasons I say that, but I think the big one, at least when it comes to filmmaking is very collaborative, right? It's a bunch of people coming together on a team in a production, working towards a common goal. For sports, and especially baseball in general, you need that as well. It's guys coming together with a common goal. Everyone needs to essentially be on the same page to get to where they want to be. It's cliche, but practice does make perfect. So it's the same with filmmaking. If you want to get good at it, you got to embrace repetition. Habitual action creates excellence. And so I think just that dedication, waking up every day and working towards something, it transferred over very well into filmmaking. And I don't know, I do think like athletes who come from an athletic background who didn't transfer over to filmmaking or whatever creative venture it might be, dare I say, they might have a leg up just because they work that muscle that transferred over very well into the creative space. That's my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah.
This podcast is all about, balancing the business and art of filmmaking. And I love what you kind of just uncovered there, right? He's saying that, he kind of leans on the art side and his brother kind of leans on the business side. And Joey and I have a very similar relationship, with him leading a lot of the creative direction and art, and where I handle a lot of the business. Not that there's not crossover, right? Like I come up with a lot of the concepts, and he can polish them and finish them, make them better. And so I wanted to ask you on the your brothers, how does the relationship work, right? So let's say you're working on a project or a concept. Is that kind of how it flows, or is there, like you're strictly the art side of it and don't do any of the business, and he handles all the contracts and the logistics, or is there that crossover, collaboration?
Right. There's definitely some crossover, just because like in the beginning it was just the two of us. And so we both had to wear a lot of different hats, but eventually as we grew as a company and stuff, we both kind of solidified our roles a little bit more. He functions as a CEO. So when it comes to business strategy, different ideas for campaigns, whatever that might be, he's the one who calls the shots. Like he steers the ship in what direction we want to go. And then when it comes to the actual project, in terms of the creative aspect, how it should be done, how it should be edited, what are we going for in terms of the feeling we're trying to evoke, I handle that side of things. And he's really good at, I would say that more the technical side of storytelling. So, okay, what lens should we use for this shot? Yeah, I have a good grasp on that as well, but he's so technically savvy in terms of like what equipment we should use, how should we light it? I understand that stuff more conceptually, but when it comes to actually practically applying it, I mean, he's a wizard at that. So I trust his judgment, and it always seems to yield a pretty positive result. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. I feel like doing what we do as filmmakers and stuff, it's important to learn as much as you can about whatever aspect, regardless of what your strength is. I think Christopher Nolan, I think, is really big on that. I was reading something about him the other day. But at a certain point, I also think it's important to really hone in on what you're good at. That way you can focus on it and get really good at it, while learning how to be okay with not having to necessarily have your hands on every little aspect, right? Because that'll spread you thin after a while. But yeah, hope that answers your question.
Yeah. You know, one of the things Shane kind of mentioned in the beginning, you know, like our like tagline, if you will, is balancing the art and business of filmmaking. And so one of the things that we've actually, I think the reason why that has become such an important like tagline and theme for this podcast is because there was a lot of learning curves for us in terms of how to balance the art, like when to let the art win versus like what money says, when to say, hey, like, you know, business is business. Like, you know, there is a constant ebb and flow there. And, you know, with his brain operating in like business, you know, most of the time, and mine being like, let's sacrifice for the art. Like, you know, there's like there's two sides that go to war there a lot. And it's not to negate that, like, I don't understand that it's show business. Like, I get it. But do you have any, like, have you and your brother like had some of those battles with balancing the art versus the business, or any, like, laws, or if you will, that you abide by in terms of like, you know, how to determine where one side needs to win versus another, if that makes sense?
Sure. That's a great question and great point. Because as artists, it's like we want, ideally in an artist's world, all that matters is the art. All that matters is what you're getting out of it intrinsically and putting a bit of yourself in it, and you know, being proud of that. That's But at the same time, it's like, if we want to be able to do this professionally, you have to learn to essentially make sacrifices. And I think personally, what keeps a lot of very talented artists back is that they're not willing to sacrifice. And there's something admirable about that, in my opinion. But if you do want to make a living as an artist, which is, you know, a difficult task for the most part, you have to learn to see the money in it as well. And in terms of my brother and I balancing that, in the earlier days, I would say, but then eventually we started to take it more project by project, right? So if we're doing a direct response video for a digital sales funnel for somebody, you know, that's about making the client money, crafting something that's going to engage viewers so they go and click on the button and book a call and get sold, essentially. So we've learned to just kind of accept, for certain projects, this is about putting money in our bank, right? Now, when it comes to other projects, stuff that we're more passionate about, and projects where we have the leniency and the ability to be creative, then for those types of projects, we put our creative heart and soul into it. But it is a balancing act. It really, I think, depends on the project and what the client is trying to achieve through using video as the medium to achieve their goals, right? I know that was kind of long-winded, but that's essentially my answer to that question, you know, if that makes sense.
100%.
Very well said. And I think, cause it is case by case, you know, it's like every project, every client, you got to sit down and think about, you know, where is the balancing act? And to your point, how much freedom will they give you in that, right? Because you can still take risk, right? Like, it's like, hey, this is a corporate funnel video, you know, to get to click, but how much freedom or trust? I find that a lot of times is like, how much does the client trust you, or even trust themselves to take risk, right, in that video campaign? And like, will they let you do a completely creative concept? Or does the business side come into play where it's like, well, they would love to do that and you would love to do that, but the budget isn't there, right? So we need to do XYZ type of video, a talking head, you know, whatever it is. And so it's so case by case. And I think that's where I find some of the joy of doing video production, corporate production, commercial production, adverts, because it's always something new, even though a lot of it's the same, but it's always something new, because the challenge is, I'm a solutions driven person, and challenges are always different, and so I'm always analyzing, okay, what is going to outweigh here? And then also working with your artist and getting them to understand or believe or fight, fairly for those moments. So, in research that we were doing, I saw that you have a degree in philosophy, correct? Or a background in philosophy and even some psychology, I believe. So I want to jump into that because I feel like, like the competitive edge with sports, do you think from a storytelling standpoint, and I love storytelling and story arcs and, hero's journey, but when we do these documentary type projects, and I've researched and seen some of the stuff that, that you've done, how does that come into play and help you tell better stories with your background in philosophy and in psychology?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, I got my bachelor's in philosophy and then my master's in clinical psychology. And
oh wow,
philosophy, I really learned how to compartmentalize information really well. I mean, it's very dense. You have to do a lot of reading, a lot of just writing, a lot of just diving in and dissecting things. And so I think from a storytelling perspective, that helped me dive into people's stories, understand what needs to be told, understand connecting the dots in terms of, okay, that's why this happens. This is the cause and effect here. It helped me understand concepts really well and how to practically portray that in terms of a visual medium like video production. And then psychology essentially it's a branch of philosophy. It branched off years ago, but it's all about human behavior and why we do what we do. What happened in our early years that put us on a trajectory to who we become. And so I was just fascinated by that. And so as somebody who studied psychology, it helps me be a more effective storyteller when it comes to telling stories about people. And especially too, I had to do a practicum for a year, which is where I essentially counseled people for a year in order to graduate. I had to get a certain amount of hours. And so from an interviewer perspective, learning how to sit with people and listen to their stories and hold the space with them and ask the right questions and navigate conversations to extract certain information that you need, that really played into becoming a more effective documentary storyteller as well, big time. So yeah, I at first it was like, okay, philosophy, psychology, how does that relate to filmmaking and stuff? But no, like I look back on it now and I'm very thankful that those were the two fields that I did study because there's a lot of parallels. Yeah.
I agree. I think, I didn't major or minor in any of that, but I had, philosophy and psychology classes and linguistics too. And how people communicate with each other. And, even the difference between, they give the example of, when you're growing up, well, the old thought was, girls would play together with girls by playing imagination. They could hold a Barbie and they would, talk through the little stories that are happening, where guys, we need to be active and like go out. So we could still do imagination, but it was like, we got to go out and hunt in the woods or create some sort of scenario. So, doing actions while we're having the conversation was, progress. And so I've used that in filmmaking techniques. And so I love the stuff that you can take that from, little bits from all different studies. But I see so much value in philosophy, psychology, linguistics, all of that kind of stuff, that it's that human connection, like you said, and even the reasons behind why we do those things. So that's really cool. So you started Platinum Peak, and that's your production company. As owners of a production company, we know there's struggles, right? But go back to starting the production company. What was that like? What was some of the biggest hurdles? Because maybe there's somebody out there listening to the show, they're a freelancer, they want to start a production company. Any kind of big takeaways that you could give somebody listening right now of experiences that happened to y'all starting a production company that they could avoid, or like big key points that's like, oh, you definitely should do this to start?
Okay. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we started it out of a college dorm room and stuff. And, we had to really pedal to the metal in order to create a portfolio, right? It's like we couldn't just go out and quote for $5,000 and we had nothing to show for it. So I would say in the early days, know your worth, but at the same time, do not be afraid to do free work in the beginning in order to build a portfolio, develop relationships. Networking was huge for us. I can't understate that enough. Like I feel like making connections, a handshake can go a long way. That really is what helped us propel our business forward, is just getting out there. We, at the time, were doing everything on our own. So my brother was mainly shooting. I was doing all the editing. And it got to be a lot. There's the concept of burnout and sacrificing a lot of our own mental and physical health as well, long hours. And so I would say if you're starting on this path, to be mindful of that. I mean, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So you have to be mindful of that and work hard and do what you need to do. But at the same time, watch yourself as well and make sure that you're doing things aside from just that can continue to, fill your cup. Like I said, learning to delegate, I think, was big for us as well, because we were so used to doing everything, just the two of us. It got to a point where we couldn't take on any more work really, because we were spread too thin. And so we had to learn how to be leaders and how to put a team together and, communicate our vision, learn how to set expectations. And that was big for us. That was hard. But we were able to scale our business and therefore take on more work because we did build a team. And that's hard because sometimes when you're so used to doing everything on your own, it's like bringing someone in, you kind of automatically think, oh, well, they're not going to be able to do it as good as me. They're never going to be able to edit that like I can edit that, or that kind of stuff. And then, it's learning to just trust other creatives and collaborate with them, because sometimes they might do something that you didn't know how to do, and it looks better than what you would have done. So that was big for us as well. And then just educating yourself, never stop learning, whether that's watching YouTube videos, whether that's hopping on podcasts to learn, whether that's whatever, trial by error, reading, you just never stop learning. So yeah, I know there's probably 15 more things I can tell, but that's a good accurate snapshot, I think, of the main takeaways from us as well.
Make them sign up for the masterclass, though, if they want the other 15 things. Yeah. That was great. No, all valid points. All valid points.
Man, while we're on the topic of your production company and whatnot, one of the things that I thought was really fascinating when, kind of doing some discovery on you was on your website. You have something that says, we don't work with anyone and everyone. You have to fit this specific criteria. And I actually kind of thought that was interesting because a lot of websites, they want to make it feel very inclusive for like, we can help everyone. And one of the things that you do is like, no, here's the box of like the type of clients we work in. And so it almost brings a little bit of exclusivity around like the clients that you work with. Do you feel like that has been helpful in just making sure the lead gen for your clients is actually like a good fit for you in advance? Like how have you seen that statement on your website kind of like, how have you felt it play out?
Transparently, we need to probably update that because we definitely don't abide by it at all times. It's been a while. But yeah, no, originally we thought of that as well by posting that. It's just, it helps the sales process. It streamlines the sales process, right? If somebody sees that, then they know what they're getting essentially, or it makes them feel more exclusive. Like, but it slowed things down a little bit in terms of realistically, okay, well, that's just not the case at all times. And sometimes we need to work with certain clients that might not be ideal. But truthfully, like we call that like the agency side of things. So like doing more advertisements, corporate types of videos, that's taken a back seat a little bit to what we really focus on now in terms of the projects we take on. Right now, we really are expanding on the vertical of documentaries. Like that's really has been our focus, which is probably why we haven't updated that Platinum Peak website for a while. But yeah, no, I think that you can be picky with clients, and it shows who you want to work with and how you can help them. Like you can only help sometimes clients with their problems and what they're facing if they have the available budget to do it. Right. And so we just figured it's like, okay, let's weed some people out here and see what we can get. But no, it didn't always work out.
I like it from a marketing perspective though, too. It's that exclusivity and the not only do they have the budget to be able to be helped, but I find, do they even want to allow you to help them? Sometimes they they don't want to let go of that control. Yeah. They go, well, we want you to do it because your work's really great and it's beautiful and you've got good, results, but we want you to do it this way. And it's going to be like this and this. And then we go, okay, well, I mean, we can be a production house or we can be a strategic partner in your advertising campaign and really help guide you, and maybe you'll get the results that we've gotten for the other clients. So there's a lot of factors that apply. Yeah. But it's not that we won't take you if you just want us to do it your way, we'll get it done for you.
We'll take your money, but you might not get results.
Yeah.
No, that's one thing we identified is like, okay, we can make somebody a flashy montage, they can put it on their website or whatever, and that's great, but is that really going to help them in terms of what the problem they're facing? So that's one thing on the agency side of things that we try to really solidify early on, is that we want to identify your problem, how this video can actually add value to your company, and then we'll go out and make it. And sure, you can obviously give us your input and we want to work collaboratively with you. But the reality is the client isn't always right. And so it's your job to communicate with them in terms of like, okay, we do this for a living. We've done it before. If you want to see results, you got to trust the process a little bit. And it doesn't mean we're going to shut out your ideas and not listen to you and put you on extinction. But, there does come to a point where it's like, trust the professionals and just see what happens, and we'll take it from there.
Right.
Now, I know you guys can probably relate to that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think everyone can. Yep. So let's dive into the documentary filmmaking, because I'm excited to hear about this. So can you kind of just tell us briefly, what does that look like? Is it corporate documentary storytelling? Is there, entertainment? Are you in the entertainment space of documentary storytelling where you're, making this and you're trying to get it distributed? So kind of unpack that for us. And then I want to know as well, like, why documentary storytelling? Why is that the niche that you're in right now and enjoying, I presume?
Yeah, well, I can answer that question right now. Like, first and foremost, like when we got back into doing like video stuff in college, we wanted to really test ourselves and challenge our ability to tell stories and whatnot. And so we decided to make a long form documentary on a topic that was near and dear to us. My dad, he passed away when we were kids, and we wanted to create a film about him. And we figured, okay, not only is this going to be something that honors him, but it's going to be something that allows us to fine tune our craft. I mean, like I said, we didn't have any formal training. So the best way you can actually figure out what we're doing is go out and try to do it. And so we spent close to a year developing this 2-hour documentary on my dad's life, interviewed probably 25, 30 people. It was a really great experience. And when we were finished with it, we were really proud with how it turned out. Like, we were like, okay, we have something here. Obviously, looking back on it now, the production quality is makes me want to throw up. But it was special, and it was a cathartic experience. And we started to think, how can we do more of these type of projects for other people, other families, maybe other people who want to memorialize their loved ones, organizations, companies that want to preserve what they've done, the impact that they've had. And so that's what led us into really branching out into this niche that we call legacy documentaries. And, I'd like to say that we were able to use that project as like a case study and be able to show people, but we knew it wasn't good enough. And so we spent 2 or 3 years doing pro bono documentaries for other people, just so we can use a portfolio piece in order to be able to show this to other people. Long story short, eventually we did start to get some jobs for documentaries where the people weren't really that concerned with like a monetary ROI. Like they wanted something that they can show their families, their kids, kids, and so on and so forth. And we found that there's a desire for it. Like, there is a need. It's a higher touch sales process for sure. Because you're taking somebody's story that's very meaningful to them and being tasked with preserving it. But it's been a really cool experience because not only have we got to see our work like, affect these families in this type of way, but it's allowed us as well to learn a lot about different people and what they've gone through and how they did what they did, and gotten to get close to a lot of different families. And by the end of the experience, it's like you almost feel like you are family with them because you've entrusted with so much of their story and who they are. So I can go down different rabbit holes, but that's from start to where we're at now in terms of the vertical of legacy documentaries. Gives you hopefully a good idea of how we got into it and why we're continuing to do it.
I found a quote on the internet by you when doing just research, and you said death drives you and your creative work. And I have to imagine that all kind of stemmed from the documentary that you made with your dad, and now like is being transferred into clients that you want to serve because you found that initial like, spark, if you will, like for video and telling stories from that. Is there anything else that you would elaborate on that quote?
Yeah, no, I know that's a morbid quote, but I figured one, it's attention grabbing. And then two, it really is true in a way. Like, my father's death really shaped my brother and I into eventually becoming what we do now. And then the documentary we did with him. So it's an accurate quote. And then two, it's like we all have one life, right? We're all living this life that we're on, and the reality that unfortunately we can die at any moment unexpectedly. That's what drives me forward. Like, sounds cliche, but let's make the best out of what we can today. And doing what we did for my dad with that project, I felt what's the right word? An urge, a responsibility, not a power by any means, but just this, okay, I have an ability. Let's bring this experience to other families as well. And because that's what we found in working with a lot of these families, these family foundations, whatever they might be, estates, that there's a worry about how they're going to be remembered when death does come. Have they done enough? Will my kids know about my story enough? What kind of values can I make sure that I translate well to my loved ones, to the community, etc.? And so I guess that quote just kind of sums it all up nice and morbidly, but it's accurate in terms of like how we've approached it and ventured on it. So yeah, I forgot about that quote.
Yeah, it's a good one. It is catching. And so true though too, and what y'all are doing now, and I love it. The something that you had mentioned that it really just made a light bulb go off in my head right now is, we talk about, we do a lot of adverts and marketing and commercials, and so we're always looking at ROI, right? Social content, funnels, and we go, when you were saying that and you're like, they're not as concerned about the ROI. There isn't ROI other than the value of them preserving their legacy, making it shareable, remembering somebody, honoring somebody. And I think about it, and like we have some corporate clients where we're doing like kind of a legacy of their, 90-year company, 105-year company, all these, a 40-year-old company doing kind of a anniversary video with all of these interviews and stuff. And it is refreshing because I'm always sitting there going, okay, what's the ROI? Like, how can I make sure that this is going to be successful for you? And they're like, we just want to preserve history and make it shareable. I'm like, all right, easy enough. That's great. We can do that, and then it's like the art side can really take off. Cause you think about it, a client that we were working for, we really got to go, okay, let's dream big. Like we want to make these interviews look like Netflix, and we're going to take the time to go through all the old footage. And like, we ran 16 millimeter film through a projector and filmed the projector and the footage and did all this stuff. And you go, man, like if this is a commercial or like the ROI probably wouldn't equal all of the, production and stuff, but there is kind of a nice benefit to that legacy and helping them preserve that. Let me ask you, after a project is done, because it is such an intimate process. Like even these companies that we're working for, we feel connected to them in a way because we're hearing stories that, no one else has heard. And maybe in some of these documentaries are internal, like we've got NDAs on some we can't, share or show. So, but it's so intimate, and with your philosophy and psychology background, psychology especially, like I'm sure there's a deep connection that can be formed with these family members, whether they're talking about somebody that's passed or somebody trying to preserve their legacy, right? And that's kind of a very sensitive and emotional topic. So tell us about your relationships with your clients, both in the process, because I'm sure it's unique, and then afterwards, what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, for sure. One thing we learned early on is that in order to make these types of films, you have to be very mindful of this person's story and what they've gone through and the adversity. And it's not that you can't just sit down with somebody and just turn on the camera and say, tell me about your mom dying of cancer. You have to warm them up. You have to build a relationship. You have to build that trust. That way, when it's times to actually lights, camera, action, you can get that thoughtful, true response out of them. So I put a lot of time into developing relationships during the pre-production process. So we do a lot of preliminary calls. I work my way up into asking certain questions and diving in there because you got to build that trust with somebody. So that was big for us, but it's been really effective for us in drawing out like authentic emotion, and helping them articulate how they really feel about certain things. Because we worked with some clients that have really gone through some really messed up stuff. And just making sure that they know that we're not there to trip them up or, make them look bad. We're there to help them. And we're here to hold the space with you. Take your time. Let's talk about it, human to human. And that has allowed us long-standing relationships with most of our clients. I mean, just the other day, I was talking to one. He was a gentleman that migrated to America at a young age from Lebanon, lost his mom at a young age, came from war-torn Lebanon, came to America, and did very well from himself. Raised 5 kids, lost his wife to early onset dementia, like just horrible what happened there. Spent about 2 years with his family, documenting his journey. And we talk probably once every 2 months, just catch up. How you doing? When are you coming down to visit? The documentary ended a long time ago. But what evolved from a client service provider relationship, what started as that evolved into a genuine friendship. And that's been cool to see and experience.
Just on a metrics standpoint, how long are these documentaries typically in length? Like what are your clients kind of looking for? Are they looking like, we want an hour, they want 10 minutes, are you doing chapters, like multiples? And then on the other side of that question would be, how long does the process take typically from start to finish with you and a client?
Yeah. So it really varies on what they want specifically. For clients that want to just keep this more internally for their family, for their closer friends, something to just essentially put in the vault, they want it generally a lot longer because they're more apt to actually watch it, right? So for those types of clients, generally they're about 90 minutes to 2 hours. And we've had a client in the past who wanted at first just a 30-minute snapshot, but then as the process went on, they were getting more and more excited. Oh, you should interview that person. So that ended up being 2 hours. For clients that want to use this more as They want to leverage it in terms of like attracting partnerships, attracting investors. Maybe they want to use it for short form deliverable content, recruitment purposes. More actually on the corporate side of things. They want a little bit more of an ROI with it. They know that's not necessarily the prime objective, but they can see it as a valuable marketing tool if they have a business, a company. So those are a lot shorter, normally like 10 to 15 minutes, and then a bunch of short form 1 minute type of deliverables as well. But it really does depend on what the client wants. And from start to finish, for more of the long form ones, it's about a year. And then for the short form ones, more like 4 to 6 months, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. It just really depends. But yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I love all the information you were giving earlier about the importance of pre-production and pre-interviews. And I have found more and more how valuable that is to do the pre-interviews and start that relationship, right? And so, one, it does make the actual filming day, you have that comfort level and you know where you want to go with the story and how you can, take that person there and find out, the little nuances of who they are and their personality, right? And what to expect and what you can get out of them on camera. Because it does change when you put all the lights on, even in this room right now with the lights on and cameras, it changes how you present yourself. Yeah. So is there any other tips you would give to documentary story filmmakers in the prep process, in the post process, or even production that would help them, that you found to be very effective in storytelling?
Yeah. So aside from just prepping the interview subjects during preliminary interviews, it's really important to get as much information that you can out of them. So even if it seems extraneous, sometimes it'll still help you understand the subject better, or just their who they are. So don't negate research, whether that be collecting old documents that they might have, promotional material, whatever it is, a family tree, lineage, old photos, all those types of things. And then doing your own research. You'd be surprised what you can find online these days as well. And we found that showing or bringing up things that you find on your own online about somebody, showing them helps build trust, number one. And then two, it impresses them naturally because, wow, you're doing a lot of research. Like you really are invested in this. And you want to show that. You want to make sure that your client sees how invested you are in their life story. In terms of production, like during the preliminary or during pre-production, it's important, to figure out really like what locations you can shoot at that are going to help drive the story forward, right? You kind of want to turn each location you shoot at into a character in itself. If it doesn't really help drive the story forward, it's going to be a little extraneous. So that's one thing that we try to focus on as much as we can. And sometimes that's not feasible because you have to shoot for convenience over what we prefer. And then post-production, we start organizing footage very early on because, for those longer documentaries, you can get lost in the editing process when there's a lot. So we really have developed our processes around getting everything nice and organized. And that's the thing about documentaries too. It's like you can have a solid idea of what you want to create and a storyline and everything, but you never really quite know what you're going to get. And so there's a lot of learning how to like tweak things in post-production or adapt, or, okay, I thought we were going to go there with this, but you know what? I like what he's saying there. So let's tweak it a little bit here. And before you know it, sometimes you go down a rabbit hole that you didn't expect to. So I would say just keeping that in mind too, and not being necessarily married to one idea and then solidifying that like this is the only thing we can do. Documentaries are all about like adapting and run and gun. That style of gets a bad rep, but fundamentally, a lot of times documentaries are run and gun. So you got to be pretty. You got to be a good editor without sacrificing the overall goal of the story.
Yeah, that's great. One of my favorite quotes, and I need to get the filmmaker credit for this because I've used this quote several times. But they say that in narrative film and entertainment, the director is God, right?
Yeah.
But in documentary film, God is the director, right? And so to your point, there's so many times where you'll be thinking the story's going to go one way, and then you just like uncover all this information. And we've had that happen in corporate documentaries where we're like, oh, it's these 6 chapters are what we're going to talk about. But I always say, but let's see, these last 3 might change it. Sure enough, like the totally different chapters by the end of the process, because we're finding out new information and new things that we want to cover and that we think are exciting, that sometimes when they're too close to it too, and like you said, when you're uncovering information too that they haven't seen in forever, and they go, oh, we gotta dive deeper into that. So
on just like the topic of documentary film work, you have an idea that you've coined called the 7 pillars of storytelling. And I was curious if I'll outline it in its history, passion, the individuals, process, challenges, successes, impact on others, and future. And so like when you're coming up with these questions for the documentaries, are you outlining your questions to kind of like go through that journey with them? Are you using that as an outline for your edit workflow? Is it a combination of the two, or how'd you kind of come up with that, and how do you actually apply it to your storytelling?
Yeah, good question. So we don't play hard and fast by that, but we realized like in the beginning when we were doing these films, it's like we didn't really have much of a process or a structure. And those 7 pillars help us more so in terms of the information that we need. So essentially it serves as the backbone of our documentaries. Doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be in that order and we're super rigid with it, but it's just helped us from a storytelling perspective with organization in terms of the information we need to extract. And so we look for mouthpieces who can serve as interview subjects for each pillar. And so, yes, to answer your question in terms of like the questions that I end up developing, loosely, I want them to fit into those pillars essentially, and then figure out who can actually serve as the interview subject for each pillar, what information we need, because we don't like to go out and ask every interview subject the same questions, right? Everybody needs to be a piece of the puzzle in a certain way. Sure, there can be some overlap, but if we were to just ask everybody the same question, there's not going to be a whole lot of nuance. And 2, that's just going to be a lot of repetitive editing when it comes to editing the project. So it's just helped us really just streamline our operations when it comes to putting these things together.
I feel like it's also a really great, like, honestly, marketing tool as well to kind of brand you as the expert storyteller. Like for you to have come up with a formula that you publicly broadcast on your website. When I went to it, my initial thought was, man, this dude has like developed a process for storytelling. I'm like, that's so cool. And like, while you and I both know, like, how to like start someone's story and kind of like bring it through and dive into all of these pillars, like when looking at it from the outside in, I go, wow, this guy is like this dude is someone who I'd want to work with. And I thought that was really cool from filmmaker to filmmaker.
Sure. It's helped us communicate what we're going to be doing for some of these clients that don't really understand it fully unless we start explaining it to them. So it's like a good visual marker, because for someone like you and me, like us 3, those 7 pillars, they're not that deep. It's not like you're reinventing the wheel, but in terms of marketing what you're doing and helping them understand your objective, it's helped them from a high level, just, okay, I get it. I get what you're going to be doing. I understand what you're going to be covering. This is starting to make more sense now. And then from there, you can dive into it with them deeper. But yeah, that's a great point. We do a lot of like little social reels and stuff, post on Instagram, LinkedIn, just diving into those different pillars that, like you said, serve as good branding and marketing.
It's awesome.
It's such a fun process. A technical question, because I'm curious, because we still like we're still perfecting our process of this and figuring out new ways, always trying new ways. We're starting to use Descript a lot on like the post-production part to try to go through all those transcripts. Do you have any hacks or tips? Do you organize it just in your editing NLE system? Are you pulling transcripts and doing word search? Like, what's your organizational hack, if you have one, or suggestion for the post-production when you're looking at hours and hours of interviews, right? Or do you have a scripty on set that's taking notes? Like, kind of break that down if you have any process that seems to really work for going through hours and hours of storytelling and selecting your selects.
So part of that is like, I can give you a better answer once we see how like AI continues to like evolve, because we have some ideas in terms of like how we want to leverage AI in terms of like, getting the transcripts, which we get the transcripts as well, just to help us kind of analyze it and then run it through. I forgot what software my brother does that, but it allows AI sometimes to pull out certain segments that, based on how we prompt it, we'll cut back on the editing instead of looking through an hour through it. Okay, it tells us exactly the timestamp of where to look. But my brother can talk about this more, but we were just talking about this recently of how we want to get to a point with AI. We want to see that happen where I already have it. How I can just go in there and just segment it for you based on how it's prompted and the transcript that it pulls. But we use like Frame.io. I don't know if you guys use that. That really helps a lot with communicating with our editors. Relatively basic, but making sure you're on the same page with the editors who are working on the project. Project files are super important. My brother, actually, we just got this new computer that holds like 42 terabytes of footage or whatever. And, because we have editors that are spread across the country and stuff. So making sure before we actually start editing the project that everybody is capable of doing what they need to from a technical standpoint.
I love that. Yeah, I'm excited to see how AI is going to continue to change the filmmaking industry. And I think for documentary filmmakers, it's going to continue to be a very interesting ride for us. So I'm excited for the technology to keep developing and help us be able to craft better stories, or not even better stories, but craft them quicker, right? Because that's the thing. It's so tedious going through those transcripts.
Yeah. Well, Eriksen, man, this has been amazing. We're inching towards our time here, but I got 3 questions that we like to quickly ask each of our guests before we wrap each of them out. So my first question for you, man, is if you could go back in time, what is one thing that you would do differently in your career?
Let's see here. It's a great question. I was just thinking about this. I would have stopped playing baseball earlier and focused more on my creative ventures earlier on. I feel like I lingered too long playing my sport when I was losing passion for it, and I knew I was losing passion for it, and I should have just jumped into something else earlier on. I think about that sometimes. Yeah.
Man, what's funny is I actually think about how long I held on to my sport too. Cause like you, I did my sport for 12 years and only quit really due to injuries. And had those injuries not happened, like I probably would have continued holding on like for way longer than I did. But it got to a point to where it was like, you simply can't do it anymore, especially at the level you're trying to do it at. But I definitely can relate to, something that's been your identity for so long. Like it's really difficult to like make a shift like that. And so on one hand, I would say I relate, but on the other hand, I would say like, it's probably more common than not to hold on to, that first dream a little bit too long. So, Man, my next question for you is, what is one piece of advice that you can give to filmmakers trying to grow in their craft or their business?
Oh boy, I can give a lot, but I would say number one, like I mentioned this earlier, put yourself out there. Like you have to, whether that is going to Chamber of Commerce meetings, going like just whatever it is, like put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to make connections. Don't be afraid to advertise yourself either. I mean, that is something I think a lot of filmmakers or people, artists in general, sometimes they can be self-conscious to the point where they don't put themselves out there and market themselves. And I think that's super crucial as a creative. So don't negate a handshake, and don't negate self-promotion and marketing yourself. Those are the two most important ones, I would think, based on my perspective personally.
Man, I love that.
Heavy hitters.
Yep. Who is one filmmaker who has inspired you or your work?
Yeah, it's a good question. Interestingly enough, he's not the greatest director, but I really loved the movie Friday Night Lights from director Peter Berg. When I watched that film, that is what started giving me the idea to create a film about my dad. In similar upbringings in terms of the football or the sports culture, similar environment. And when I watched that movie, I just felt really emotionally connected to it. The music, the grittiness to it. There's something about that movie that just really resonated with me. And that's what put me on the path to thinking about the type of film we should make when my brother and I were starting again with the documentary and stuff. So I think about him, Peter Berg. He's done some other great movies. Lone Survivor was good, but then he has some ones that are just not good at all. But yeah, I would say Peter Berg just for that reason. Yeah, not my favorite filmmaker, but one that just inspired me.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, there's sometimes there are some directors that like, it's not like their entire filmography is, Christopher Nolan's, but it's like they have those individual movies that can kind of move you more than anyone else. And so I've definitely found that in my like all-time favorites, there's some wild card directors in there that it's like, not everything that you did like really impacted me the same, but this one really made a difference in, just my life. And so that's cool to hear that you have like that film that, it's not just the one director that you love everything that they do, but you found like someone that made something that really connected to you. So.
Yeah. Well said. Sometimes all it takes is one gold nugget. So
awesome, man. Well, Eriksen, man, this has been a great episode, dude. I've really enjoyed getting to hear your story, learn about just how you got, connected into doing documentary work via your dad, and just lots of great takeaways on how you formulate stories. And so, thanks for just coming by today and doing an episode and giving us some advice and some wisdom, man. For those that want to get connected with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, they can reach out to me on my email if they prefer. My first name, Eriksen, at platinumpeak, peak with 2es.com. They can reach out on our website, platinumpeak.com. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn or my Instagram as well. And I can shoot those over for you guys so you can put them in the show notes if you want.
Awesome, absolutely. Man. Well, dude, thank you again. Sincerely, we appreciate you just spending some time with us in the studio today. So for those that are still listening, man, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of the Rough Cut Club. Thank you, Eriksen, for being here, and we'll see you guys next time.